With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
A very good morning if you're in the UK. It's at 6:09 in the morning. Don't you hate it when that alarm goes off? Oh, man. I'm sure there's a few of you with broken alarms in the corner. Flying at supersonic speeds. It's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's my bloody alarm. And I'm sure many have bruised hands just by thumping it and having to buy a new one. Alexa, shut up. Anyway, that's what we have in the morning. It goes off at 5 to 6. It's a terrible, terrible thing to happen to you, but it keeps happening. I don't know why. Maybe I should see someone. And if you're in Australia, in Brisbane, it's 4 o'clock or 10 after 4. And in Sydney, it's 1 hour in front. And so there you are. It's somewhere in the world, it's a particular time. Now, we're going to talk about the, the insurrection in Minnesota and the Trump deportation record. What's happening in Minnesota? We see the lovely media, they go to town, don't they? Extensive fraud, though, has been uncovered involving the Somalian community. High-level officials are implicated. Local law enforcement is not actively assisting federal agencies such as ICE, which has left many cold, and has come under attack for arresting illegal immigrants and shootings of 2 civilians in Minneapolis. On top of this, radical external organisations and individuals are funding the violent protest. To de-escalate the situation, President Peace Trump has sent in a border czar. His name is Tom Homan, to take over on-the-ground operations. And I'm just wondering, is this what an insurrection looks like? Joachim Hagopian is going to join us in a sec. We're going to chat about who is behind this mess and where it's likely to end. Joachim, thanks for joining me. We haven't got you, mate. Yes, there you are. You just popped up then. I pushed a button and guess what? First of all, how's Thailand?
How's Thailand? Well, Thailand is a pleasure palace here.
So what you do, you go from one paradise to another.
Yeah.
Did you take your water buffalo with you? That's the question.
No, he's back there. He's munching on the grass.
What's its name, by the way?
You know, I never named him.
What? I can't believe it.
It's an unknown world out there, so...
You throw a stick? Do you throw a stick, play fetch with it? I don't know. I've never had a water buffalo, by the way, so I wouldn't know. Hey, what's your thoughts on the Minneapolis? And it is chaotic. It's a fiasco. I think from both sides. I think Tim Walz. What a great distraction to distract what should be happening, and that's investigating him along with the Somalians. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like every news story and development unfolding today is a distraction. It's meant to cover up what else is going on. And there's so much going on in this world. It's hard to stay up on everything, because it's happening all so fast. I always look at it like it's divide and rule all over again. It seems like every news development is divide and rule. It's basically the controllers. Now, the controllers consist of the City of London. Some people even call them Khazarian Mafia, the crime cabal, the international crime cabal. You can have a lot of different names for it, but it's the people that hold the power of money, and they control pretty much the planet, unfortunately. And so when I look at this particular issue of the divide and rule in Minnesota, it's like the right, which is conservatives, ICE, Trump, the Nazis, the fascists, versus the left, which are, the Marxists, they're funded by the globalists that bring in all the people from south of the border pouring in, the Democrats, the left. Uh, they're all the same, as far as the divide and rule, the conservative right versus the liberal left. And so it's big money behind both these factions, and the same controllers are behind both the right and the left divide. So that's what we're seeing played out daily on a violent scale in Minnesota. We see the governor and the cover up of the Somali scandal with the federal government. They're in it together, and so yeah, it's like let's bring on the Insurrection Act. This is Trump now, the Trump team and the right. Let's bring on the Insurrection Act. Let's declare national emergency. Let's go full blown militant police state in America, because that's where Trump and company are headed. And then, of course, the left is out there to say, oh, you're being too brutal. You're shooting American citizens that are exercising their First Amendment free speech rights, public assembly to protest. Come on, I mean, where's our Constitution? All of this. So they play against each other. And that's the dynamic here. And it's the dynamic that runs pretty much in all the breaking news stories today.
Yeah, I'd see that. I see also Governor Tim Walz. What a creep he is. Sorry, this is my own personal opinion. And I may say things that aren't savoury at times. Use words such as creep. They are pretty violent. Also, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, Democratic Republican. Now, she's great, Ilhan Omar. Shock horror, you will be shocked, by the way, that they are not cooperating. This is where they can't cooperate because they'll go to jail, won't they?
Yeah, basically, they are all criminal. They're all playing their parts. It's like, it really is almost like a psychodrama, and there's each side, the protagonist and the antagonist, But yeah, there's no good side or bad side. There really isn't. They're both bad as far as the two forces that are clashing in Minneapolis and the United States. I mean, it's a much larger problem, but the epicenter of the unfolding events today, it happens to be Minneapolis. It could be Los Angeles, it could be San Francisco, it could be Seattle, Portland, any of those hot spots, where the left is in control of the state government and the mayors and all that. Yeah, but you just got to look at the bigger picture. Who benefits? Well, who benefits by all the wars? Who benefits by the pandemics that kill people? Who benefits? It's the same ones behind all of this.
Tell me, these shootings, the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretty, have put a lot of pressure on ICE and distractions. What are your thoughts on that? I know one. I mean, the other I'm not too sure about, but one, I think the woman who was killed, she obviously had an episode of some sort and drove straight at the ICE agent. You can't do that. But I did hear also that there is a select group, not a select group, but a group of ICE agents who are about 3 or 4 levels above the others in their own mind, and they are quite. They have no respect for your own rights, and they're very bad. Not the entire ICE agent community, but these ICE agents, there's a few of them, and they sort of are more like following Donald Trump's wishes, but to a very, very the umpth degree. What's your thoughts though on these shootings? I mean, if you have chaos, you're going to have shootings, aren't you?
Yeah, when you bring it to this level of
Portland and
intensity.
Seattle and these places. Yeah, they're all good. You know, there's, if you have guns or you're going to drive at someone or try and kill someone, you're going to get some sort of retaliation. America, I mean, I love the States, but it seems to be all over the shop at the moment. I mean, you are right. You mentioned it's so political, but if you look at the Democrats, they hate Trump. I mean, look at some of them are moving, to other countries, and many are saying good riddance. But why would you do that? Truly, I mean, we have a terrible prime minister here. He's horrible. It doesn't mean I'm going to hop on the plane and move, where you live with your water buffalo. I'm going to stay here, hang out for a while.
Well, you have to realize that ICE and all the federal agencies, including the metropolitan police departments, the largest cities in America, all train in Israel. What does that tell you? You know, it means that basically we're all Palestinians. That's what it means. They are training to kill. That's the bottom line. And there are trigger happy guys out there. They actually react in fear sometimes. Now this guy, the Preddy guy that got shot just recently, he had a lawful possession of a firearm on him. They took it away before they shot him, so it's not like these operating ICE officers were in self-defense. They clearly were not. And the same case is with the good case. She initially was driving into the crowd and then started pulling the steering wheel away when the shots were fired into the windshield that killed her. So, in other words, these guys that are on the front line, yeah, they are in a war. It's a contrived war by the same controllers behind it, but they are each on a side and they're each are, the right versus left. Yeah. People are all there. I mean, it's almost unheard of now that people have discussions where they actually present their point of view and it's respected. It may not be agreed upon by the other party, but at least the voicing of it is out of respect to hear the other person's point of view and then counter with your own point of view that may be different. That's what civil society does. Unfortunately, there is a breakdown where the right left extreme cannot tolerate any other point of view other than their own. And they resort to combativeness. The fight flight syndrome kicks in the brain, the midbrain, the primitive midbrain, and they're ready to do battle. And this is the way it is. I see colleagues now, fellow journalists, going back and forth, and emails, like just, they're calling each other's, it's like a kids in a playground where they're ready to battle it out, I mean, that's what the world's come to. We've allowed the controllers to have this kind of effect on us where we're all ready to do battle.
What about the guy, the nurse? He had a gun and had magazines.
Lawfully permitted. We have to, and he did not draw that gun whatsoever. He made no motion toward using that weapon. It was taken away from him, and he was unarmed when they shot him. I mean, the facts are the facts.
He had a gun, and he had magazines full. So I probably would suggest, why would a nurse have a gun with magazines full? Anyway, the courts will work that one out, I would imagine. Well, maybe they won't. Who knows? What do you think about because we have there are various far left groups and individuals. A guy called Neville Singham He's a billionaire living in Shanghai. And he and these groups are funding this chaos. That's probably an insurrection. I mean, if we go back to January 6, perhaps, we should also pay a visit to Neville in Shanghai. I like Chinese. And these other far left groups and say, look, we understand you're trying to keep the employment lines going smaller, and you're paying these people, but unfortunately you're paying them to create chaos, burn down buildings, create a lot of law and order headaches, and you're breaking the law, basically. You can't do that. Come and visit us, and we'll visit a judge. Do you think that needs to happen, though? Do you think they need to, Neville and the others need to have a visit from some high-ranking official with a gun?
Yeah, I believe that all of this unrest is caused by big money. Big money. There are ones that are on the left side, and there are ones on the quote conservative right side. But they're oligarchs playing both sides. The divide and rule again. That's the dynamic here. But yeah, it's organized and it's funded by oligarchs, wealthy individuals that are part of, what's called the deep state cabal, or however you want to describe it. But there's an elite group that seems to be manifesting all the disruption and conflict in this world. And they do it because they have a lot of money and means to be able to pull all this off. So, yeah, let's go to the root of the problem and the people that are pulling the strings from up there with all the money and power. Let's go to them and hold them to account for what happens down in the streets of Minneapolis and everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, Minnesota is not the state with the highest number of illegals. Do you know which one is? I mean, would it be Texas?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be Texas. California's got a lot of them too. Florida quite a bit too. Those states, I think, have more, definitely.
Donald Trump. I know you're a massive fan of. I mean, you're not a massive fan of Donald. Does he need to change his strategy? Because he has removed or deported 200,000 illegals. That's a massive number, isn't it? I mean, and he's still going. They were let in by the previous administration.
Right.
So if Donald did change his tact, became a little more touchy-feely, but not so violent, how would he change? What should he do? I don't know if you could do this any less gruesome than it is at the moment. Maybe not have many people dying, but 200,000. That really says a lot about the number of illegals. I mean,
well, they say though that anywhere from 20 million to 40 million came in during that 4-year period under the leftist Biden regime. That's a lot more than 200,000. And there were promises made that there would be a lot more that would be deported. You know, my view is that Trump is following orders. He's a disruptor. He's a destroyer. He's the bull in the china shop that just shakes everything up. And so he's doing a very good job of that, polarizing both sides, the left versus right. I mean, I agree that there was big money that on the leftist Marxist side that put the immigrants in America, the quote invaders into America. It's all been very well organized, and Trump, by being the other side to try and remove those that are foreign, especially criminals, foreign criminals that have invaded America. Of course, I think all Americans would agree there's a problem and that we need to deport those that do not belong because they've illegally entered. Just enforcement of the laws that are existing. Yeah, but you have to realize that Biden was there. He didn't win the election. Trump won in 2020. So, it's all planned and pre-planned. We go back and forth, left versus right, Democrat, Republican. They stayed in power that way. That's their MO, the divide and rule. So that's what we're all seeing played out here in this drama.
If you were president, that would be an interesting administration, I have to tell you. But if you were president, and you had to fix this problem up, and you mentioned 20 to 40 million, would you probably go and have a couple of large glasses of scotch, because it's a very daunting number? 200,000 is a large number, but 20 to 40 million. Do you think they'll ever get anywhere near that number?
No, I don't think so.
What would you do though? How would you do it differently?
Well, you have to get both sides working together, and I know that's counter to the programming of the divide and rule. They're not supposed to get together. They're supposed to clash and have the whole emergency powers. That's what Trump's going for: total emergency, fascist control over the streets of America. But yeah, you have, at least with the death, this latest death, it's now bringing these people together. Supposed meetings have happened between the head of ICE and this mayor and governor now of Minnesota. So that's what is needed. It has to be an integrated approach, but that goes counter to the agenda by the ones that are pulling all this off.
It's very interesting, and it's very disturbing. I had a couple of military people on yesterday, one in particular, both in Hawaii, of course, and they were spreading their aloha spirit all over the place, but they were very upset at what's happening in the mainland. I mean, Hawaii is sort of like, oh, well, we'll get around to it, bruh. We'll do it tomorrow. And they never do. But mainland, it's on steroids, and it is very disturbing. Not a good look for the rest of the world. And you have President Peace, aka Donald Trump, trying to bring peace around the world and within his borders. And I'm not saying it's entirely his fault. And I'm probably saying it's probably little to do with him at the moment, and more with the funding by various leftist organisations and other countries such as China and the others who want to create some upheaval. It's not going to do a whole lot of damage except, probably destroy the communities within the US. But I do think it's a very, very, it's very unsavoury, and it doesn't make the US look a good place to live and to be walking around trying to bring peace in countries where within its own borders it just can't do it.
Well, I mean, sets a bad example of all this conflict in America and the whole. I disagree with you though on the point that Trump's trying to bring peace in the world. He's doing just the opposite. Um, and all you need to do is look at this whole buildup of almost war in Iran, and it is coming. It's a definite. But they're preparing for that. They know that Iran has rebuilt their air defense system, and they have many more missiles. They only used about less than 1% of their arsenal in that 12-day war in June. So yeah, there's more fireworks all over the world that's going to be coming because that's also Trump's job. He's to stir up trouble both in America, where there's civil war, and make world war around the world in many different hotspots. Oh, he was going to fix the problem in Ukraine in 24 hours. Look what that is. We're still waiting on the quote talks. It goes back and forth, on and on and on we go. There's more hotspots. Look what he did earlier in the month in Venezuela. He's not a guy that's about to make peace with the world. He's making war against this whole world. So that's how I see it.
It's a scary place we live in. Actually, it's terrifying at the moment. And that's why you're on vacation or holidays, as we would say in England.
Yeah, you got to get away from it all.
Yep, I mean, nice that I said that you go from paradise to paradise. Half your luck. Not that we're jealous, but we are. I did get a message from your water buffalo handler, said it's missing you very much. You got to pick a name, Rex. Oh, what sex is it, by the way, male or female?
Male.
Rex. Rex the water buffalo, all right?
Okay, that's a good name.
If somebody wants to find out more about you, Joachim, just to follow what your readings or your thoughts, how do they do that?
Well, all my articles are posted on thegovernmentrag.com, jameshfetcher.org, and then I have 5 books out: Pedophilia and Empire, Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. It's a series that exposes the pedophilia plague on this earth, used by the same guys that we're talking about here, that's doing the immigration problem, wars, all that. They're the same ones. So if you want to get a deeper glimpse into that, that's on Amazon, but it's also pedoempire.org. You can find every chapter of the 5 books and read it for free.
Great chatting, great conversation. Enjoy your noodles and a couple of beers. Joachim Hagopian, thank you very much for your time. This is The World Today.
Growing up, my father enjoyed a drink. It was just part of our culture. So you might have started drinking at 15 or 16. And so then it's just a slippery slope. As it affected me in the end, it was to the point where I couldn't even have money in my bank account because, I'd go to the pub or I'd go to the bottle-o. I started roofing in Sydney when I was about 20 years old. I had a crane come down on us. I jumped off the roof and the crane laid exactly down the line I was running. I could have ended up in a disability or life-threatening situation, and through that I developed PTSD. I medicated pretty heavily. I had a pretty pessimistic outlook on life. The glass was always half empty or whatever it was. You don't realise those things are impacting you so much. It's really hard to walk through the world. Depression and those negative feelings lead to thoughts that, you'd be better off not here. Suicidal thoughts are a terrible thing, You look at what you've given your family, you look at what you've taken away from your family. Dealing with that for extended periods of time and not talking to people about it is something that's probably taken a toll on me and my family that I didn't realise. My drinking got to a point where I was drinking in the mornings and, I had a job, and my boss told me, it wasn't good enough, and I was so lucky that, my boss took me to an AA meeting that night. When you walk into AA, it says on the wall, admit that you can't do this yourself anymore. The second thing is admit that you need God in your life. Having that written there and it just saying, try and turn to the Lord, I thought, well, rightio, now that's my chance. I met Robbie pretty early on. I sort of reached out to him and said, where do I go? And Robbie had been coming to the Salvation Army Church and he said, look, come with me. And we spent a lot of Sundays together. That was pivotal in what I'm doing now. I believe that I was brought here for a reason. I came into the church and I was lucky. There's just so many lovely people here. It's the community as well as the church. One of the members prayed for me. And I think it was in nearly that time that my PTSD was healed and I felt like I belonged in a way. Walking close to the Lord has helped me use my heart more through worshipping the Lord on my own and connecting and drawing him close enough so that he could literally heal me. But when I start to fathom how much healing, glory, there's enough for everyone because that's how it's written, it's never ending. One day after church, I was at home, had an opportunity to see the kids, and my littlest boy was there and he was 8. And he looked at me in a way that he'd never looked at me before in his whole life. That's because I was sort of talking to him differently. I was really lucky to have that moment and to see what could happen if I just keep doing the right things and keep walking with the light. That was something that was pretty amazing. I'm going through a bit of a hard season now, with work and things. I think all I can do is move forward positively. But I really look forward to a future where I can see my kids and my boys grow up. So I really look forward to these next years to live a calm, peaceful life.
What is Australia's deadliest predator? The one that hits with more than 30 Gs of force. Strikes in under a second. Leaves catastrophic injury in its wake. You won't hear it, you won't see it, not until it's too late. Australia's deadliest predator isn't found in the wild. It's on our roads. Speeding is the killer.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back. Some people asking about the background, why I'm doing it from a pedestrian crossing. That's Abbey Road. Shame on you. Hedley would know all about that. I talked to Hedley Rees, Managing Director and Lead Consultant at PharmaFlow Limited, very shortly. We're going to talk to Hedley about what's happening in the regulation of drugs in places such as the UK and Australia. We'll also chat to Hedley about the US exit from WHO. Fantastic news. And if others will follow and how it will affect, well, the organisation. Hedley, thanks for joining us. Tell me about the, and you're looking quite, you've shrunk. Anyway.
Yeah, I've had technical problems this morning. I don't know what I look like. I look okay to me, I think, but I'm on my phone and I'm a digital Dumbo, given my age. So I apologise if I've got two heads or anything.
No, you just look little. You're being dwarfed by me. I look like some big boomba. What's your views of the US pulling out of WHO?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I've just pulled out on my evidence file for SARS-CoV-2 injections, which is a giant file. Guidelines for this is the WHO document issued in 2007. Guidelines for assuring the quality and non-technical safety evaluation of DNA vaccines. Now, this was 2007. It's an 81-page document, and the supply chain requirements to be able to make these safely are enormous. And the WHO was self-elected, non-government organization, NGO. We know what they've been up to. And it's duplicated all the regulations that are the formal regulations that had been set up by both the formal competent authorities in every government around the world, such as FDA, TGA, in fact, European Medicines Agency, MHRA. They are formal competent authorities that have delegated powers to control drugs. And yet, the WHO, the way they frame this is that the industry's got to follow their requirements, whereas actually their requirements are just a duplication, which has been in place since at least 1990, and before that even. So, to get out of the WHO is an absolute important thing. But the problem is that the WHO set up they were duplicating their regulations, but they also set up a duplicate authority that had membership of every regulatory authority across the world. And it was called the International Coalition for Medical Regulatory Authorities. No legitimacy whatsoever. But because they all joined up, then we knew that the first chair of that organization was Dr. Ian Hudson, who was also the CEO of the MHRA. This is in 2016. So we've got the head of the MHRA in the UK, also chair of this duplicate body that had no legitimacy whatsoever. All the FDA was joined up, TJ was joined up, MHRA was joined up, everyone was joined up to this, almost every country in the world. And they sort of took on a life of their own with Ian Hudson as chair. Um, he was also a bigwig in the European Medicines Agency in terms of he was on a deputy chair of a committee responsible for approving drugs across Europe. And then in 2019, Hudson joined the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as head of integrated drug development. And of course, COVID started the following year in 2020, and then we had injections in 2021. So really, the WHO has masterminded this whole injections scam. And the reason I knew it, because I looked at the supply chain requirements that they were publishing in 2007, and they could never have done that in 10 years, let alone 9 months. And I'd like to see other countries leaving as well as soon as possible. The what you'd call the Eastern Bloc countries in the West, Hungary and that, I think they must be very concerned about the WHO. So there's a strong case for countries to leave the WHO, and I think now the US has done it. That's going to knock a big hole in their funding. But this organization now that's been set up by MHRA, who are the chairs this year. Swiss Medic was the chair last year in 2025, and that is the Swiss Regulatory Authority. But all this harmonization has been done by the International Council for Harmonization, an organization that has globally harmonized all the regulations since the early 1990s. So the WHO is not relevant. We don't need the WHO. We just need what we had 30, 40 years ago, which is ICH, the International Council for Harmonization. And we need the country regulatory authorities. And the FDA is really beginning to punch its weight with Robert Kennedy Jr. behind it. And I just hope Donald Trump does not bow to any pressure to destabilize Robert Kennedy Jr., because there's a lot of lobbying against him. A lot of people who'd like to see him go, especially people who've been fired from the FDA and the HHS. So it was a good move to fire a lot of those people. But of course, when you do that, you initially create enemies. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, Mike.
No, it all makes sense, Hedley. You are very succinct. Interesting too. I saw a video yesterday. We're going to discuss it tomorrow with other guests, but it shows you that and it was done in I think South Korea, with regards to the mRNA vaccines and how they are responsible for such a huge number of cancers in people. And they say a lot of the cancers are around the point where you receive the inverted commas vaccine. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. The thing is, I've said this before, Mike. These injections are rebranding of the CD9, I think the CD9 directed CAR T therapies. Now, they started development in 1960 and they weren't going anywhere. But in 2014, the FDA, under the previous administrations, gave fast track designation to these therapies. Now, fast track basically meant that within 3 years, Novartis launched the first of these therapies, a CAR T therapy called Kymriah. And if you look at the side effect profile of it, the side effects are cytokine release syndrome, sepsis, also called cytokine storm, neurological toxicities, and secondary cancers. And the FDA has put a black box warning on those. This is in about 2021. They put a black box warning on there, and they subsequently added secondary cancers. So if you accept that these injections are a rebranding of the CAR T therapies, which I believe they are, then those side effects would be very well expected to have taken place. Now, I don't know the mechanism by which these secondary cancers are occurring, but we've got people like Professor Dalgleish, who is an oncologist who's very outspoken about seeing cases, and personally, and where I live and our family and the people we know, there are a lot of people. I say a lot. There are people who are dying of pancreatic cancers, the very aggressive cancers, in 2 months. My wife works at the local hospital, and she hears these things, and people aren't even asking questions at the moment. So, um, but you have to know that these injections have been in development. I was involved with them in the CAR T therapies. I was involved with them in 2013. So they've been in development at least for what's 2030, 13 years before that even. So if you don't know that they're rebranding, then and you think they were developed in 9 months, then you haven't got any hope of working out what's gone on here.
Yeah, I was just looking at the online. It's from the Independent Medical Alliance. It's Dr. Paul Marrick, and he discusses recent COVID vaccine cancer review published in OncoTarget and the backlash and what they did. They tried to discredit the two researchers, did everything they could. In fact, they targeted the second researcher at the end, and Pfizer offered the researcher, not sure it was a guy or a gal, offered the researcher a job at Pfizer, try to buy him out. It's very, very interesting, and if you can, Dr. Paul Marrick, but by the way, if you just go to the Independent Medical Alliance, which is formerly the FLCCC Alliance, I think with Pierre Corey. So it's an interesting video. It only goes for about 5 minutes, and we'll play it tomorrow and talk about it with some of our other guests. But they're very scary things, these, and as you mentioned, they're just sort of repurposed or brought out of the, brush off the cobwebs, and off we go. Where does the UK stand on this sort of what's the word? The research and reviews and stuff? Are they supportive generally, or especially when it comes to COVID, or are they a bit still like what they were years and years ago, that you have to go through particular hoops and hurdles to get to be able to present your review?
Yeah, well, they're still exactly the same. I've stopped for the time being, but I've just been through a phase where I wrote to the chairman of the MHRA, the current chairman, Dr. Harnden, or Professor Harnden or something, because they should have recalled the AstraZeneca injections, not just allowed AstraZeneca to stop selling them, but AstraZeneca is also solely and wholly responsible for all the stuff they made, all the component parts, the vials, the stoppers, the lipid nanoparticles all over the world. I said clearly, the AstraZeneca injection sold in 170 countries, Australia being one, and you can't just make them sell them and then say, "Oh, we'll stop selling them now." But the whole distribution supply chain is still in train, and who cleared that up? No one knows. No one knows if some of this stuff is in places it shouldn't be. It's still doing harm. And the MHRA, I won't go into detail, have a department that's responsible for investigating drugs when there's any sort of slight idea that these drugs are causing problems. Any drug is causing problems, and who wouldn't have concluded that with these injections? Then they have a department that has to investigate, and they have to go to all the doctors, the pharmacies, right up the supply chain back to raw materials to find out what went on. MHRA, and in the end, they refused to basically, they stonewalled. They just kept stonewalling, and there's lawyers behind it, because I've been using Perplexity AI to be able to frame these letters so that they've got a legal standing. And it's their lawyers seem to be able to beat what I'm sending. And it's a stonewall now. They said we only deal with the UK, so we're not responsible for those 169 markets where AstraZeneca sold these products. So someone else is going to have to sort that out. But the TGA should be investigating all the products that were sent to Australia that people took, and whatever is existing in could be in warehouses or car parks. We know all this happened in. It wasn't so much so with the AstraZeneca injections, but MHRA are still exactly the same as they were, no change. And now they're the chair of this access group, and I don't know what they're going to be doing. I honestly don't, because everything in the industry is in place to make sure drugs are safe if they follow the existing regulations. That FDA is the only one, I think, now has got back on track.
Read somewhere in the UK they're talking about building a trusted network. Can you tell me, is this just bureaucratic hot air, or are they legit? And I don't think it'll ever work, but what's your views?
Well, if this was the aviation sector and the civil aviation authorities or the equivalent in Australia or America, whatever, said, well, we're going to get together and we're going to help get planes to market quicker. We're just going to do it because there's not enough innovation with the planes that Boeing and all these guys have. They've got no control over it, but they're going to help them do it. Now, what do you think about the Civil Aviation Authority? I'm not saying they are doing this, but if they are saying we're going to help these drugs these planes get to market quicker, cheaper, or whatever, because they've got no control over that. They're not making planes. Their job is to make sure the planes are airworthy, safe, and all the safety things that you have. So you'd immediately think there's something gone wrong here. If the aircraft companies themselves can't get planes to market any quicker, and I think they do follow all the right standards. If the regulators are saying we want to get it to market, you have to, quicker. You have to ask questions, and that's what they've done. They've taken on a role where we've called it enablement. And we had the June rain is there to enable vaccines to pharmaceutical products to get to market, and even that is a gobsmacking comment. But it is now that these regulators, as I say, not the FDA, are enabling and doing things to help drugs get to market quicker without making sure the safeguards in the supply chain is crucial. The supply chain is the rate determining step in developing a drug. 3 years to build a non-clinical supply chain and make sure it's safe, and 7 years to build a clinical supply chain and make sure it's safe and effective, hopefully. But that was all distilled down to 9 months because they ignored the supply chain. They just said, we run some clinical trials from. The first one was made in YF Biopharma in Andover, which had a horrible inspection in 2021. I've got a copy of it through a Freedom of Information request. That first process 2 drug, BNT2B2, should never have been sold, should never have left that plant. And if any lawyer wants the evidence, I've got it here in my desk.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's just going around in circles at the moment. But a bit of hot air, a couple of glasses of wine, catching up with other scientists and government ministers, and achieving absolutely zero. Would that be about right?
Yeah, that's absolutely bang on. And there's no sign that anything is going to change at the moment. But I'm having a lot more traction now as a business with PharmaFlow and with my book, because and I'm back on LinkedIn after being in the wilderness for quite a while, and there are a lot of people on there now being outspoken. People outside the industry, directors, executives, people who work in automotives, who work in aerospace, and these industries, when they know what the supply chain is and they know how important it is, they're beginning to speak up. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn or you want to get on LinkedIn or whatever, my friend calls it Facebook for business. But the power of LinkedIn is that you can actually connect with people who you want to connect with, people who you think you've got something in common with. You don't have to post all these stuff that they post.
What is
And
your
I just think social media and Facebook again is very open. There's stuff on Facebook now that would never have happened 3 or 4 years ago.
what does your friend call it?
Paul Morris, he's a Welshman, and he won't join he won't join LinkedIn. But
Good on
yeah.
you. Look, if somebody wants to find out more about you besides LinkedIn, how do they do that?
Well, I've got a Substack called Inside Farmer. It's free, and everything is on there. The inspection at Wyeth Biopharma, the first Pfizer drug that was launched. It's a research and development facility. It's not a manufacturing facility. So they can Inside Farmer, hedleyrees.substack.com. I write books. If you go on Amazon and look at my various books, you can see those. COVID Supply Chain Facts, Not Fiction is a favorite of mine because I wrote that in 2023 in anticipation of people asking questions like, how should drugs be developed then? And so that's how to get in touch.
Good on you. Plenty of choices there. Hedley Rees from Pharmaphobe, MD, thank you so much for your time. We'll do this again very shortly. This is The World Today, and coming up next, we'll have the protagonist.